Let's dive into the discussions shaping the nation.
Taoiseach, renting has never been more expensive or less secure than under your government. This week, daft.ie published their figures for the rental market for the start of this year. And rents are now climbing faster than at any point in the last 20 years. Average new rents are now over €2,000 a month. That's an eye-watering €24,000 a year on rent. And in Dublin City, new rents average now at €2,500 a month. That comes to a €30,000 yearly rent bill. Taoiseach, in the middle of a cost of living crisis, how can working people afford these rents? How on earth could anyone save for a home while paying such extortionate rent? People are getting ripped off and they are sick of it. It's no surprise that young people are going to Canada and Australia. What chance really do they have to make their life here? It's never been harder to rent a home, to buy a home, or to get a council home. We are in the middle of a housing emergency, a crisis that requires emergency measures, but there is absolutely no sense of urgency from you. I've never seen a government move so slowly or achieve so very little. In 6 months, your most significant legislation was to increase the wages for the biggest ministerial team ever seen. We've seen week after week of statements, committees limping into place, a real do-nothing government. And of course, you blame everyone else for your failures. It's the opposition's fault. It's the local council's fault. And now your housing minister is blaming the one modest protection that renters have, the rent pressure zones. In an interview with the Irish Examiner, Minister for Housing James Brown says that rent caps were, and I quote, significantly inhibiting the delivery of apartments in Dublin. Now, just to decode that, what he actually means is that vulture funds are telling him that in order to invest, they want to charge even higher rents. The minister says there has to be change. There's no question about that, he says. What does he mean, Taoiseach? That the rent pressure zone cap is to be raised? That landlords can reset the rent between tenancies to new market rents? That new rental properties will be completely exempt from control? Taoiseach, renters need to know what your minister means, because any of these measures will mean even higher rip-off rents for tenants. Tá an cíos a méadú níos tapúla inisneog ámarbe le 20 bliain anuas. I lár géir céim costas marach tála ina bhfuil an phráisear cuile rud a dul in Oireachtas, conna starlat atá ibrithe nanamis a bheith in ann €2,000 a íoc mar cíos in aig na míosa. Tá is ag daoine go bhfuil drochmharga a dhéanamh leo agus tá siad bréanda. In the same interview, Minister Brown promised to protect renters. Now, Taoiseach, that's gaslighting renters, speaking out of both sides of his mouth. He tells landlords that they can jack up rents, and at the same time, he promises tenants protection. Of course, that's not possible. He can't do both of those things at the same time. So can you and your government come clean? Are you caving into the demands of vulture funds for even higher rents? Or are you going to give renters a break and stop these rip-off rent increases once and for all?
Thank you, Deputy.
Well, first of all, Deputy, the RTB rent index is the most reliable, I think, indicator in terms of rent prices and so on. It was published on the 15th of May, and according to the RTB, the standardised average rent for new tenancies nationally rose by 5.5% year on year to €1,680 in Q4 2024, while the rents for existing tenancies rose by 4.6% year on year to €1,440. These are high rents, under no illusions about that, even if those figures represented a decline in both rent levels from the previous quarter, Q3 of 2024, and continues the downward trend in the growth rate of rental levels observed since early 2023. But of course, the rents are too high. And the fundamental issue is supply. And you talk about never have you ever seen a government. I've never seen an opposition so bereft of ideas and so lacking in conviction on the housing issue. And the people, that's the bottom line. Because if you look at it overall and take the context, look at across the European Union, and many Western economies are having this dilemma in terms of the mismatch of housing demand and supply. From a European Union context, for example, Ireland is doing probably higher than most in increasing housing supply. In terms of real investment in dwellings, the Irish economy registered the 4th largest increase across the 27 EU countries. If you look at the recent ESRI publication comparing housing supply across Ireland, Northern Ireland, England, Scotland and Wales, it found that on a per capita basis, Ireland and Northern Ireland had the highest rate of house building and Ireland and Scotland had the highest rate of public built housing. And that's against the backdrop of very significant population increase, persistent strong economic growth and income growth, and huge pressures on housing. So the government is spending very significant amounts of public capital money on housing. We need more private sector investment, Deputy. Now, the Housing Commission, which you supported, called for a review of the rent pressure zones. And the rent pressure zones are effective in terms of protecting renters and rent increases, but all of the established literature, and again the most recently quarterly bulletin from the SRI is saying that long term we are restricting the growth of supply in the private market. I reckon state investment by the end of 2025 will certainly go close to 9 billion. Or 8 point odd, we're at 8 point odd billion now at the moment in terms of state expenditure on housing. The Department of Finance is saying we need about 20 billion to get to the targets of what we need and that everybody in the House has agreed on. You are so lacking in any initiative in terms of how we bring private sector investment in. And it's a serious issue. You can smile all you like, but it's a serious. We need to be real with people here. And not coming in, because it seems to me what you really want is us to stay static in policy terms so that you end up not actually making the step change that is required on housing. So parallel with sustained investment from the public purse, from the exchequer, we will need significant increase in private sector investment. We need to create, and in line with the Housing Commission, we'll see what the review brings forward, but we most certainly need to create a secure investment landscape for investment in housing into the future on the private side to supplement the record levels of public sector investment in housing that we currently have in this country. And the first quarter of this year alone in terms of housing supply is the highest since 2004, or 2008, bar the COVID bounce in 2022 that came out.
Deputy McDonald.
So what I want, Taoiseach, in summary, is I want you to stop screwing it up. That's actually what I want. I want you to take account of the fact and really accept the fact that you are presiding over an emergency and a catastrophe. Record levels of homelessness. This society is now so numbed to your failure that record numbers, 4,000 children, 5,000 children in homeless accommodation now, doesn't cause really a ripple in the public conversation. You have normalised your catastrophic failure. An entire generation is locked out of any prospect of home ownership and they can't afford the rent. And they're voting with their feet, Taoiseach. They are in Perth, they are in Toronto, they are not in Dublin and Cork and Galway and Limerick where we need them, their skill, their energy and their vitality. I asked you to explain to me comments from your housing minister.
Thank you.
So, and I want you to answer straight. What did he mean in respect of the one modest protection that you've afforded to renters in the rent pressure zone? What are his intentions? Are you siding again with the vulture funds, or are you going to side finally with tenants?
To respond.
There's a number of points. Dúspáir in team lat Níl an Cartagut, agus Níl Moran, Réitach a Gutsa, Model F5 Tehiachta. Deputy, you haven't addressed the core point I made. We need private sector investment. You used the phrase vulture funds. I believe You're back to the heckling now because you don't like the answers.
It's a debate.
I believe passionately, I believe in public sector investment. And we had, in 48,000 social houses alone in the last 4 years, we've had the highest level of social housing provided by any government in over 20 or 30 years. That's a fact, okay? And in the last, we exceeded our targets on housing for all in terms of 30+ thousand houses over the last 3 to 4 years. That's a fact, but it's not enough. But we need private sector investment. You call it vulture fund. We do need institutional funding in the country to supplement the state level investment. And you shouldn't be, and that's the problem. In the last election, you had proposals that would screw first-time buyers. That's why the people. That's why the people didn't give you. That's why the people didn't give you any ringing endorsement of your housing problems. They failed to convince people the last time.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy Ivana Bacik of the Labour Party.
Like, share, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.